Hello family. I'm putting this video together just to give a kind of walkthrough on the beginning parts of this pattern, so when we meet together next Friday we can just cast on and talk through, you know, your excitement and things like that. The reason I'm not on camera today, if you can hear it, I am very sick and very nasally and I look like how I sound, unfortunately, and I'm not putting this on camera because that's kind of gross. But I do still want to at least give you a walkthrough to kind of see, or, you know, show you from the beginning of choosing this pattern and selecting your materials and, you know, kind of going through some of the steps, and maybe it'll make things a little bit clearer for you as we lead up to cast on day. So the pattern that we're using, this is the app, the Tin Can Knits app. Let me see if I can just show you it. This is what it looks like when you jump in here. You can click on the little plus button to add a pattern from the app. If you've already purchased apps from Tin Can Knits, they have the Ravelry PDFs that will auto feed into the app for you. So these are all the ones that I have purchased or download or received for free, whatever the case might be. But you're gonna just look right here under app patterns and you're gonna look for this flax sweater. And first thing you notice, it does come in 3 weights and 19 sizes. So it's a pretty good pattern to choose from if you're looking for a first project, I think. And so one of the things we look at when you look at this sweater is it's a crew neck, so just a round neck. It has this little garter ridge detail down the arm, on both arms. It is optional according to the pattern. These lines right here are called raglan increases, so that's a style of sweater. So it has a garter ridge bump as well as some increases along the arm. Like I said, the ridges are optional, so if you don't want to deal with the fussiness of remembering to knit and purl, you can eliminate the ridges. I think they're cute, but I don't always put them in, but I do think they're nice. It has many options. We're going to get into those next. So first thing you're going to do is figure out what size what size yarn do you have that you want to use. Now, the most common weight of yarn that you'll find in most any store is going to be a worsted or an Aran weight. It will say a category 4 on the label. But for summertime, you might find a category 3 in a cotton, or even a sock weight or fingering weight yarn is also called. So whatever yarn you want to pick is fine. If you just want to make this for the sake of practicing, that's fine too. So no harm, no foul, whichever one you choose. So for me, I'm going to make this sweater for my daughter. I'm going to do it in a DK weight. And this is the yarn I found in stash. It's an old one that I got from Hobby Lobby years ago, I think. It was a clearance thing, you see, $2. And there's the category 3. It says the recommended needle size is a size 6 or 4 millimeter. It also tells me that the swatch would give you right around 21 stitches and 24 rows. So that's what they say, the people who make this yarn, that's what they say. And in this, my DK weight yarn box, it tells me that I should be trying to get a gauge of 22 stitches in stockinette over 4 inches. So this one tells me that I would get 21. For me, not that big of a deal. I think it's a good fit. Let's get to the next page. So here's where you're going to select your size, right? Now it says 19 sizes. It does go from child all the way up to adult. One little thing that I always like to suggest is, if you find a shirt or a sweater that you really like the fit of in your closet, you can kind of use that as a reference for maybe how much ease you want. Ease is just how much space is between your body and the material. So maybe you want it to be extra baggy, that would be positive ease. Maybe you want it to be a little more fitted, that would be negative ease. So you're going to pick your size based on how much ease or not ease that you want in your pattern. I think one of you said you were making the 3X, so this would be what you're looking at. bust circumference of 55.5 inches. And then it has your options for length of your sleeve. It has your option for your body. So, you know, depending on how long you make it, you'll use more yardage, you'll use less yardage. I am going to make a short sleeve because it's summer, so I figure she'll appreciate that. It tells you your yardage size or yardage amounts for the 3X. In a DK weight yarn, you would be looking at roughly 1830 to 2520 in the yards. So if we were using this skein of yarn, this has 335 yards in one skein. Child, do the math, but you know how I did it in the store, right? 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. That would be at least 6. That would get me to the 1830. And then if you want to add some length on the sleeves and you want to add length to the body, then you may be looking at maybe 8 to 10 skeins of something like this. So you'll do your math and figure that part out. But the bare minimum that you would need would be the 1830. As most knitters do, we always buy a little extra because we just never know if we might run out. So there's an interesting article that you can navigate to in this further details on this garment's fit. It kind of explains the whole ease and measurement situation. I'm not going to get into it. They wrote it pretty well. If you have questions, just let me know. We can talk it through. And so now I have made me some choices, and now I'm getting ready to finalize, right? So this is the DK weight. Oh, let me go back because I'm changing this for my daughter. And I'm making her the size medium. So I got a DK, I got the adult medium. Now I'm choosing my options. Do I want to make a regular size body, like full length? Do I want it to go from armpit to like lower hip or high hip? Or do I want it to go from armpit to maybe waist length, which would be cropped? So if you want to do a cropped body, it would be short, right? She has a lot of body. We're gonna give her regular. We're gonna do short sleeves, and it could be just like that. You can also do a 3/4 sleeve, or you can make it into a long sleeve. So for me, I'm gonna do the short sleeve. So now it tells you again about how much yardage you're gonna need. It's also telling you the estimated length on each of your sections of your shirt. So if there's something you want to lengthen, just keep knitting. If you want to shorten it, stop knitting sooner, and that'll be fine too. So just a little overview. Now we get into the materials that you're going to need. So she's telling us we need the 1190 yards of DK. I know I don't have that much, but we're gonna work it out. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna shorten the body for her. So just a little bit, just to make it so that I can fit, because I have 3 of these skeins of yarn. Just right about 1100. I might be able to squeeze it out. Then we have this gauge. Gauge is saying 22 stitches and 30 rounds on your larger size needles. So the suggested needle size is saying a US 4 and a US 6 in both a 16-inch and a 32-inch and or DPNs. Is the US 4 and the US 6. That's what the pattern is saying they use to create this project. When you work this gauge swatch, it's telling you to use your larger needles. So you would grab your size 6 needles, which is what I have here. And I'm going to put them on to, let me move this back a little bit. I'm going to put my needles on my 32-inch cord, and I'm going to finagle a gauge swatch for you. So I got one needle on. Now I don't know if you're using interchangeables, but this little key right here, you need it. So, or a key, a little stitch marker like this, anything that will fit inside of that hole. You just need to be able to give it some grip so that you can tighten your needle. So put the key in the hole. And then you use this to kind of give it some grip, because without it the needle won't tighten. I mean, it'll tighten, but you can't give it the oomph that you need to keep it stuck, keep it closed. I just pulled out my yarn from the middle, and I'm just gonna pull out a length of yarn to start a small swatch. 22 stitches and 30 rounds across 4 inches is what the swatch says. So when it says 22 stitches and 30 rounds, that does mean you're going to be knitting in the round for this swatch. I'm going to do a long tail cast on, and how I do that, I just measure out my yarn by wrapping the end of my yarn across my needle, and then just wrapping it across 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I just take that length out, and this is now 20, right? Then fold it and double it, that's 30, and then 40, and then 50, and this is 22, so 50 is more than enough. The thing is, you want to give yourself some space, because you want to be able to measure in between the swatch, not at the corners of the swatch. So you're not just going to make a straight 4 inches, because that you can't accurately measure anything in 4 inches at 4 inches. So you need to have a little bit of extra room on either side, even if it's just an inch or more. So I cast it on, I think, way too many, but that's okay. We'll go. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 19, 20, 21, 22. So according to the pattern, the gauge swatch, it tells me that I need, pull this in, I'm measuring 22 stitches and 30 rounds. But again, I need extra space on the side, like a buffer. So I'm gonna add maybe 5 on each side. So I'm gonna add 10 more stitches. Probably even more than that, honestly. I always go a little too big, because you just want it to be, you want to have enough room in the middle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 18, 19, 20. So I got 42 stitches total. So I have this on a 32-inch cord. Well, one of the things I hate about Knitter's Pride cords is that they do this curly thing in the middle, but it is what it is. It'll straighten itself out in time once the work gets heavy and everything, but initially it is quite annoying. So we're going to knit. It says 22 stitches and 30 rounds in stockinette. Knit this in a round. Knitting in a round, stockinette, means you just knit every round. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to get you to the end, and I'm going to show you how we knit this in the round for a swatch. So you get to the end. Now, if you were knitting a regular square swatch and you were knitting back and forth, then you would just turn this around and start purling back. But because we're knitting in the round, we're going to keep this yarn. We just made it to the last stitch, right? This needle is free. You're going to drop it over there, slide these stitches back over here, slide them, right? Slide them over, pick up your needle. You see this yarn that ended over there? It ended on this side. You're just gonna drag it around, not too tight, nothing too crazy, and you're going to continue knitting over here. And you're just gonna go ahead and continue knitting straight. Knitting in the round is what this is. And so what ends up happening is you have this slack of yarn behind your work, and that becomes the equivalent of knitting it in a circle. So you don't have to, I mean, you can if you want to knit the whole thing in the round, but you don't have to. You can just finagle it by leaving a slack of yarn behind and continuing to knit row by row or round by round. So I'll get to the end and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so now we're making it down here to the last 4 stitches again. We're just gonna knit them, knit, knit, oops, and knit. And now we're going to knit another round, so we're going to slide the work to the other side of the needle. All right, slide the work over, and you see that string is still back there. It's still coming from the row before. It just hangs out back there. The working yarn, you drag it over here and you start knitting again on this side with the working yarn. Just pick it up and start knitting. So 30 rounds is what I'm trying to get to. And there is my second round that I just started. So that's how you swatch in the round. You just keep going until you have 30 rounds to measure. But remember, I said at least try to do an extra 7 to 10 because you want to have space in between the work. It kind of balances out the way that you knit, your tension changes and all of that stuff. You want to give yourself some space, like a border, in order to knit the entire work. So go for 30 rounds or 40 rounds even, and I'll meet you back then. All right, so I didn't make it to 30 rounds, but I wanted to show you what this looks like knitting in the round so you don't think that you're losing it when you do it. This is what this looks like. So you have your flat swatch essentially. Let me open this. And then on the back side is just these rows of string that are not knitted, they're just carried across the back. See? So when you're knitting in the round, that's all you're doing is carrying the yarn from one end to the other and still knitting back and forth, but you're just carrying this yarn in the back. So that's what this swatch would look like knitting in the round. I'm struggling, y'all. Sorry if I sound extra nasally. I apologize. So in the pattern, oh, let me bring this closer. Hold on. So it says I should have 22 stitches and 30 rounds in 4 inches of stockinette. This is not 4 inches. This is just hitting almost at 3, right? It's barely hitting 3, or is right at 3. Normally, when you see people do swatches, they're gonna shrink them down a little bit because we don't really feel like working it. But what you can do as an option is maybe do a half swatch where you just do 2 inches, like you'll measure it across 2 inches and have the rest of what's listed. So 22 stitches would become 11, 15 rounds instead of 30 across 2 inches on the same large needles, and it should give you the same amount of work. So this is in the round. I want to say it's recommended when swatching in the round to cut this, but I'm not doing that because I'm already hard pressed for yardage. I'm already pressed for yardage and we're not getting rid of yarn that I can use. And so what I'm gonna do, this is why we make the swatch bigger than just the 22 inches because I need space to measure just the middle part. That makes sense? Right. So I took my needles out so that I can lay this flat and we can kind of look at it like this. So now it's flat, it's in the round, right? I got those pieces on the back. We're gonna lay this out and we're gonna measure a section of this work in the middle. So we're gonna measure the stitch count. For most of us, the stitch count is more important than the row count, because the row count is really just gonna indicate how long you're gonna knit something. So I'm always more concerned with the stitch count, meaning the width and how it's gonna fit across and how tight it'll be and things like that. So I have my ruler, I have my marker tool, which is just my little key, and I'm gonna count from here, which is 1. Let me move this over just a little bit. This is the 1 column. I'm gonna count my stitches, which are gonna be the little V's. If you wanna call them V's, you can call them holes, whatever you see in between the stitch. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So I'm at 12. So I'm interjecting an audio after filming because clearly I was very sick and not really paying attention to my numbers. In the video, I was under the impression that I was having my numbers and I should have had 15 stitches. But if you remember when I looked at the chart and I halved or split in two to do a 2-inch swatch, I should have had 11 stitches and 15 rows. So me coming in at just over 11 stitches, I was technically right on gauge, technically. But as you'll see in the next portion of this video, I'm not really too thrilled with the fabric that this creates, so I am going to end up going down a needle size just to create a denser fabric, primarily because this is going to stretch while wearing, and if it's going to stretch with it looking the way that it looks currently, it's going to be way too holey, way too meshy, and that's not the look I'm going for. So I'm going to go down a size in needle, but I'm going to keep the pattern size the same because the yarn is clearly going to be of a much bigger or voluminous yarn once I finish. I will say too, if you just look at the gauge on this, not the gauge as in the numbers, but the type of fabric it's producing. This is a little too thin and holey for me, so I would want to go down anyway on a needle size. It would give me a denser fabric. It would look more like this. You see how it's together like that? And so when I go to put it on, I don't have to worry about being able to see through it. So if I go down a needle size, or 2 even, it will give me a denser fabric. So when I say swatch, even if you don't swatch to get gauge, but you swatch to see your fabric, this is what I'm talking about, because you want to make sure that whatever yarn you're using, you want to make sure you like the feel of it, the flow of it. I wouldn't want this on my body. It's too see-through, you know? So I would want this to be a little tighter, and so a smaller needle makes perfect sense. Now I can take a size 5 needle right now, do another swatch, measure it, see how it is, see if I got gauge or not. I am not gonna do that, but I strongly suggest if you really want your fabric to be perfect, and you want it to fit you well and all of that stuff, you can do it the right way. That is the best way. We're not gonna even encourage bad habits here, but I am gonna say I don't always swatch for gauge. I swatch for fabric. I want to make sure that what I'm making is going to be something that I enjoy wearing. And with this fabric, the way that it's coming out right now, even though this isn't for me, it's a little too thin. And it makes it counterproductive, because if I have to wear a tank top under this, what was the point of making a summer t-shirt? You know what I'm saying? So not gonna like this fabric because it's too see-through, it's too thin. I shouldn't be able to see through it that well. So that's swatching in the round. I hope that was a little bit helpful. And now let's go on to the next portion. Oh, magic loop. I'll have to show magic loop once I cast it on. I have to get a sample going, so I will show that in another video. But hopefully the swatching in the round part makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions.